Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network 105.3 and 107.7 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee, who have been a part of our journey since the very beginning. Thank you, Folgers. We appreciate you so very much, and we would not want to do it without you. Also, big thank you to Justin Snicker, a.k.a. Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for his contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro that you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind all of our banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror genre and can do any amazing commission pieces. So tonight we welcome back our very dear friend and frequent flyer, as we like to call him, who's Preston Dennett, who's going to be sharing more tales of experiences, contactees, testimonials, and so on. Always interesting, always a lot of fun. We just, it's never work when you're on with people that you love. And tonight's one of those nights. Yes. So big welcome to Preston Dennett. Bam. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Hello. We could just go on a few minutes with that one. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm doing well.
Good.
Had a great Thanksgiving. Over 8, which I think is required.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course.
What'd you have? What'd you have?
Oh, the traditional stuff.
Nice.
Not a big turkey because not a lot of us here.
No, but like how much turkey? I can't even eat it the one time a year. Like how much turkey do you actually want to be left with, guys? Like seriously.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do with it. Enough for that week, and then it's like, I'm done. I don't want to have to take something out of the freezer a month from now. Right? You know what I mean? Like it's sometimes people get carried away. It's a beautiful visual to take that picture of that big turkey.
You can't eat all the different sides.
Don't need the 30 pounds. No.
But we had stuffing, of course, and mashed potatoes, which I can live off of. I love mashed
potatoes. Me too. Daily.
I'm Irish, I guess, so I think I love the Irish potato.
Well, Italian, same thing, right? Like always, hi, John. I'm always potatoes. Oh my God. My father used to say it wasn't a meal unless you had a potato.
I absolutely love potatoes of any form. You name it.
Yeah. Wow. That was a little fun fact about Preston y'all might not have known.
Preston and I are going to get along very well if we're ever in a restaurant. I don't share my fries. You can have my dessert, but I don't share my fries.
Oh my goodness. My goodness.
Hello. I was more Irish than I actually am because I just had my ancestry done not too long ago. Turns out I'm 1% Indian.
Wow.
India. Who knew?
So someone hundreds and hundreds of years ago was over there.
Yep.
It just tells you collectively. You never know like whose side of the.
I'm all over the map. I had no idea.
Yeah. That many? I've never done it. It kind of makes me uncomfortable, but
it was interesting.
I'm very curious.
I was so sure that I was like half Czechoslovakian, a quarter English, quarter Irish, and Pennsylvania Dutch.
No.
Well, I'm so much more than that.
Aren't most of Americans part Pennsylvania Dutch, though?
I heard something like 80% of people in the US are Irish.
Yeah.
Some Irish blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. The
My
Irish
great grandmother was half Irish.
Yeah.
And
Well, the
yeah,
Irish built New York City.
yeah.
Yep.
They started it. The Italians finished it.
Oh my God. Wow.
We're
Anyways.
all one. We're all one. That's what's
Yes.
matters.
That's right. That's right. The law of one. I'm always yapping off about it. That's all
I
us,
wonder
all
if the
together.
ETs do that. They're like, well, I'm part gray, I'm part human.
Right. I like that. I don't know.
Part
Can
gray?
you have a mix of reptilian and gray
Do they
hybrid
test for
and
that?
human?
Do they test for that when they do those DNA tests? Like
Well,
that we know of?
Dolly has some
Well, there's
very
a
interesting
conspiracy.
genetics. I'll just say that. She can tell you about it.
Yes, yeah, we've spoken
Yes.
in detail for sure. So you are back, and we're super excited because you always have some phenomenal stories to tell. One of the things we always talk about on the show is how everything that pertains to extraterrestrials and UFO slash UAP contact and experiences always lean towards the malevolent or bad experiences. And it's always a breath of fresh air when you come on because you always have so many phenomenal experiences and they're good experiences. And I think it's really important considering everything that's going on in the world. I don't think this is something else that people really have to worry about.
Yeah, I'm kind of baffled by that because honestly, I don't edit. I am not, exclusively picking positive stories.
Right.
If someone comes to me and says, "I'd really love to talk to you," I'd be like, "Let's talk."
Yes.
And after I go really deep into their encounters and we go through it bit by bit and parse it out, sometimes they come around. Even then, they'll say, "Well, this was kind of a mixed bag for me, but you're right. I did get a lot of good out of it. No, I wouldn't trade it for anything."
Right.
But every now and then, yeah, there's people who are like, "This was a miserable experience. I wish it never happened." That's few and far between. Mostly.
Is it really?
Oh
What
yeah.
about people like me who are just afraid?
That's actually not few and far between.
Okay.
That's pretty common.
Not alone. Yeah.
But-
Yeah. So what do you do? Why don't we talk a bit about people who are fearful and how you get around that? I mean, you always tell really lighthearted stories. It amazes me how many people reach out to you. And you do get the odd, scary story, but do you think it's because it's more fear-based, or you just think that their experiences are a-holes? It's like you get one little, because I mean, it's like any race. We all have the good, we all have the bad. We just all have those who just want to be a big a-hole.
Yeah.
Like they just, you know, because I mean, we've had people say, "Oh, yeah, like it was just done. I actually pled with them," and they're just like, "So, right?" So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know fully how to explain it other than fear is definitely a part of it. And it sort of goes through this pattern. Often, of course, as we know, contact starts at a very young age.
Mm,
And usually little kids aren't like, "Oh, look, there's a gray." They're like, "Oh, here's someone coming into my room.
right,
Isn't this interesting?" And it's pretty much not a super scary thing. Not always,
right,
but at some point, and it's usually around when they're a teenager, this is when they start to realize, well, this is a little different.
right,
A lot of people aren't talking about this, and they have a real hard time with it. And it can be very scary.
right,
And this is when people, if you don't face it, you can compartmentalize it. You start having nightmares, anxiety, insomnia, fear of intruders, missing time, of course, because I don't think the ETs are intending to scare you. And if you're losing your mind over it, they're not going to burden you with that.
right,
And then it'll stop for a while. And then in the 20s, it depends on each person. I've talked to people who've had maybe 4 or 5 encounters. That's it. Others,
right.
it's boom, 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 boom. It's constant. Others, it's 1 or 2. But usually it's, bunch when you're little, bunch when you're a teenager, stops for a while, flares up again in your 20s, stops, flares up in your 30s, stops. And
Right.
it's unique, honestly, in each case. But I mean, I
Right.
had one lady, she's like, these guys are evil. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I hope you're all right. She's like, yeah, I'm all right. I'm like, what happened? She says, well, they appeared in my bedroom. And I'm like, okay. And she says, it was really scary. And I thought I was, I was losing my mind with fear. I'm like, why do you think they're evil? She says, well, the way they looked at me. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't mean to laugh. Each person's experience is what it is.
Right.
But they didn't do anything to her. Not that she can remember. And she came to this conclusion that this was evil. And what I've come to realize, because I keep struggling with this, in much the way I think the witnesses are, is that if it's scary, if it's unpleasant, you can easily categorize this as a bad experience and evil. And the thing is, they appear in your bedroom, and that's what people have a hard time with.
I can't. Yeah, that's my big thing as well. It's just, it's intrusive.
Yeah.
Middle of the night.
About that. I'm like, where's the most common place to see an ET? Well, it's not out there under the field when you're calling them down. You'll see a UFO. You're most likely to see an ET in your bedroom.
Right.
Places.
Yeah, that's a little bit unnerving, but it's like Wayne makes a good point. 1 second. Where did that go? Here you go.
With Wayne.
I had to move the banner because the comments went over Amelia's head. So
it's okay.
Can you see it?
Oh, shoot. No.
Okay, you want me to do it?
Hold on. Okay. No, I gotta just get my glasses on. That's really tiny. Okay. Wayne says, I'm open-minded, but honestly, if I suddenly found myself in a strange place looking at a 12-foot tall mantis, I'd lose my bleep.
Yeah. Because that could be unnerving. Like, it's not always a typical gray.
Well, that's exactly what Kevin Cannon told me. Pretty much those same words, and he did. And it wasn't 12 feet, it was 15 feet.
Okay, see right there.
And he actually conversed with them. It was a very benevolent back and forth conversation.
That's a really large bug.
Yes. And that was his problem.
You know what I love about winter, Preston? No bugs. Why are ET encounters? You hear a lot about them in the winter, though. Like, you get more stories. Is there a reason for that?
It's most common actually in the summer.
Really?
Well, in terms of UFO sightings.
No, I mean encounters in your house.
I've never done a full-on statistical analysis of that.
Next book.
All right. It's going to be a hard project, Amelia. Thank you.
I'm curious. I'm a numbers person, so I'm curious.
Details about some of these species.
Well, when I hear people talking about their experiences, I wonder if it's like paranormal, because in the winter nothing's really going on. You're noticing more, right? In the summer you're busier, you're out, maybe you're not as aware, you're really tired, so you're sleeping heavier. Who knows? Because we have the opposite. Like, during the winter there is much more paranormal activity that is being reported, not necessarily much more activity, and then the summer. So I wonder, because I hear these abductee stories, and a lot of times it's in the fall and the winter. They don't say, oh, it was the 4th of July and I was sleeping and this happened. Like, it's around the holidays or something. Like, I've been noticing things like that. That's what I do. I pick up details in my work, and I've been picking that up in interviews. So I was curious. So it could be, at least a chapter of another book.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth looking into, because it would be very interesting if there were a pattern that was like super obvious.
Yeah.
Which I did find some. July 4th, oddly, is the most common day to see a UFO.
Yeah. They're all outside.
Yeah. And it turns out ETs are coming down for the fireworks.
See, that makes sense. Fire,
what about the moon's energy and the planets and how everything shifts?
Yeah, I did notice that there seems to be a slight uptick when there is some sort of astronomical event, like in a lunar eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another thing I haven't really dug deep in. But I'm like, wow, there was a lunar eclipse on that day.
Yeah,
that was the day the Topanga Canyon wave swept through. On a June 14th, 1992, there was a lunar eclipse. And there was a huge
1992. Yeah.
That's
but I know that there's definitely an uptick in the summer And they've noticed this for decades. And they thought at first, maybe it's because Mars has its closest approach. They were trying to figure out, this was before, of course, we knew about Mars and had gone to the moon or anything like that. But it was such a prominent pattern that they called it like saucer summer or summer madness. But yeah, I mean, you pick a day, I can guarantee you I can find an encounter that occurred on that day. I've got a
I
big enough
believe it.
database.
I believe it. There's so much curiosity because I wonder about the energies, the sun, the moon, the different planetary systems. Does it affect how they come in and out? Does it change portals? Like, I have a million questions for them if they'd let me ask them.
Yeah, well, I think we all do. Yeah.
I think they don't want to ask me because I am an interviewer. Like, we don't abduct people who ask that many questions.
Yeah.
Bet you Barbara
We don't want to
Walters
have a conversation.
bet you Barbara Walters was never abducted.
She'd probably make them cry like she does everybody.
Yeah.
If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
But Kevin Kemen, the Navy medic I interviewed, who, as I mentioned earlier, saw 15-foot tall praying mantises, did ask them. He asked them about Roswell. They said, yes, that did happen. He asked them, are you going to eat me? And they said, no, we have no interest in eating you. We eat vegetables and fish and the things you eat.
Well, they're pescatarians.
He asked where they're from, and they told him the name of the planet and everything, or the star.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what did they say? And he says, I can't. It was all just consonants, and it was just somewhere I couldn't understand.
Wow.
They showed him a little star chart, which is actually more common than you would think. It's not just Betty Hill who saw a star chart. That comes up fairly, well, not frequently, but it certainly comes up consistently.
Right.
They will answer your questions.
So should people be fearful? Because I mean, I know there are accounts where people have had really horrific experiences with the mantis.
Yeah.
Well, you should be fearful of my labs and government stuff.
Yeah.
And that can be very difficult to extricate the truth from.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand it if you're fearful when you're laying out on a table and you can't move.
Mm-hmm.
See instruments coming towards you.
Yes.
One lady I interviewed who had a kind of a mixed bag, ultimately decided it was positive. She said, I did have one experience I didn't like at all, where they came down and put this needle-like thing in my eye.
Oh.
And I'm like, yeah, that has got to be horrific. And
I can't even imagine.
Betty Andreasen, she called them angels. That's how she looked at them. They took her eyeball out. Yeah.
So
did she
why?
look at it? Like she watched. Why?
Yeah, well, I looked into that. There's a smattering of cases of that.
Why? Do they get any explanation for this? Like
some think it's an implant. Well, one guy, he was interviewed by John Carpenter, a researcher. He was colorblind, fully colorblind, and they did that procedure and popped him back in the sockets, and he was no longer colorblind. So,
but can they not just put him to sleep for a little while?
That would be. I think that probably happens more often than not.
Yeah.
I wonder, do they not feel pain, and that's why when they're inflicting it, they're unaware?
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, so like, why inflict pain?
I don't think that they intentionally do. What happens is when someone's in a state of absolute fear and you touch them, they're going to go, ow! And this, you can see this with hypnosis. You can burn someone with an ice cube. By just hypnotizing them with that. And this, when you're in that kind of state, anything is going to cause pain.
Right.
I do have cases where people are like, no, they stuck a needle in me and it was painful. It happened to Betty Hill, and she's like, ow, you're hurting me. They put their hand on her head, and they said, we are sorry. We didn't mean to cause you pain. I was just looking at a case a couple of days ago where a couple had missing time in Oregon. They saw what they thought was a plane. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Because the next thing, well, they didn't really remember. They got home 2 hours late, but started having recall and ended up going under hypnosis and recalled this object dropping down, being entranced, kind of unwillfully walking towards and into this object.
Mm-hmm.
A man and a woman, a couple. And he's pulled in and laid out, and she walks in, and they said, oh, well, we didn't really mean you to come into this room, but you're super psychic. we think you're going to be okay watching this. Just relax. Everything's going to be fine. And she watched her husband being examined. And he couldn't open his eyes, or wouldn't. And they grabbed his arm right here on the forearm and here and stretched it out super painfully. And he screamed out, "Ow, you're hurting me." And they took away his pain.
They're watching too much of the Tudors.
No, but here's the thing. That was basically it. And he came away from that experience profoundly depressed, really got upset, ended up losing his job, had to move. But he had injured himself as a young man to where he could not extend his arm.
And they fixed it?
They fixed it.
Wow.
And under hypnosis, he found out why he got so depressed.
Oh, maybe hypnosis isn't always a good idea.
Well, the ETs told him when he was on board that we are so sad about the state of humanity, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's up to you guys. And just laid it out on all the wars and the famine and disease and corruption. And that's what depressed him, because he says the ETs were actually very loving. He had a real hard time reconciling, the trauma he went through.
Right. Well, that's hard.
Yeah. But it was a benevolent experience for them.
Right. It is. I can completely understand that. I think it's the fear, the pain. There's just this. We don't have a whole lot of understanding. I think there's just been so much information kept from us. I always go back to how the ancient people had really amazing experiences for the most part with, the beings from the stars, as they would call them, the star people. They would often have amazing oral history. They would emulate them. They would, tell tales for generations. And they weren't like, I would say the majority were all good experiences. I think it's a lot of the more malevolent tales came from the reptilians. And there's some old tales about that, but there's some old tales about reptilians that have been really knowledgeable and really good as well.
Yeah, I heard you talking on a previous show about that statue of the reptilian in
I can send it to you.
Peru.
Yeah, I can send you the story. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's amazing.
But I mean, because they had like a type of, I won't say apocalyptic, but the area had a really traumatic physical thing that was happening to their city. I can't recall it exactly, but they went underground and to escape the cataclysm, whatever it was at the time. And they basically, this one reptilian came down and took care of them. He educated them to the point where they ended up erecting this statue. But then again, there's a shaman who like out of Africa, and his oral history was how these reptilians came down in these really, like decrepit crafts and literally just to rule. Like it was a terrible experience.
Well, I suspect that each species at some point has to go through an uplifting process, an evolution, a spiritual progression. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if there's, a history of some difficulties with each, I don't want to say species, but each type of humanoid. But boy, someday I wish that doors of history would come open and we could see what really happened, because that's so many years ago. Nobody really knows. They weren't there. You know what I mean? And I suspect back in those ancient times, people were telepathic to a greater degree, perhaps, than we are now.
Right.
And that facilitated a relationship with the ETs, who were much more open. I mean, we know they were coming and going, which we're seeing now. Well, certainly since 1947, when they started coming in larger numbers, when we finally reached the point to be able to kill ourselves and all humanity and destroy the planet.
Do you think that's when it got worse for us as human beings, as a society, with governments now getting involved because they got their hands on, maybe some of these crafts, reverse engineering, and all of a sudden you can't talk about it. You can't, like, gone were the days of, being able to gain knowledge about this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that it's no coincidence the atomic age and the modern age of UFOs coincide exactly. And I really think that's when humanity started to really go, well, I don't want to say humanity, but let's the cabal,
Right.
1%, an evil
Mhm.
portion of people on this planet. And I'll use
Right.
that word freely, evil, because when
Mhm.
you're, funding both sides of a war and polluting water and deliberately hurting people, that's evil. There's no two
It
ways
is.
about it.
Yeah,
Uh,
it is. It is. You have a lot of comments and such coming in. I've started a couple of things here that you can go in, but just let me go back into, there you go. Bubbles, can you get that,
Get
please?
glasses. Under the screen, it's a lot smaller than the comment section. That's why. Yes. What percentage of ET encounters would you estimate were mantis versus human-looking ETs?
I'm going to say, gosh, it's a hard question to answer. This is another thing I'd really like to just buckle down on. In my files, I can say human looking is more common. Mantids would probably be about 10%, maybe 20.
Yeah.
Not super common.
Mhm.
Rays mostly, honestly, is what I get.
Right.
But, you get little blue beings. You get strange 10-foot tall humanoids, 9-foot, 8-foot, short
Right.
little beings of all kinds. I
Right.
just talked to a lady who had a really interesting encounter in Europe where she lives.
Mhm.
Gosh, I'm not sure what country it was because I had just kind of finished doing a sort of email type interview with her. But her encounter was so interesting because she's walking along with her friends and boom, this craft drops down, it becomes transparent, and there's these human looking people, blonde hair, blue eyes, your typical Nordic, looking down at her. And
Wow.
human looking, absolutely human looking, but
Right.
different. They're
Right.
either
See, that's easier to take.
It wasn't super easy for her. They freaked
Really?
out. Yeah,
Wow.
because it was so close and it was so strange.
Right.
And she tried to talk about it with her parents, and he's like, "Oh, those are probably Nazis." And she didn't think so.
Oh.
This was quite some time back.
Wow.
I think
Wow.
it was in the 50s, maybe. I'd have
Right.
to look it up, but
That's crazy.
I think when it hits you unexpectedly and you've had no exposure to it, it knocks you over. It destroys your belief system, and that's a painful experience.
Mhm.
When you're not expecting something like this and you've never thought of it.
Mhm.
And I was just looking at a case where a guy had that exact experience. And let's see, this was in Glasgow, Scotland.
Right.
Walking down the street at 3 a.m., black top-shaped craft drops down, and there's a big porthole. And looking down at him is a blonde-haired, human-looking, blue-eyed being in a silver suit with little stripes on the shoulders. He had a nervous breakdown shortly later. Full on, couldn't do any more interviews, didn't want to talk about it.
Wow, really?
So, yeah, it profoundly affects people when they have it. I get that because I didn't even have an encounter, not initially. I just found out my brother did, and my sister-in-laws, and people at work and friends. And I was like lying there in bed awake at night for a year.
Really?
Oh
Wow.
my!
I was excited when first time I ever saw craft. I was younger. I was so excited. I felt this sense of like awe.
I think when you're younger, you like roller coasters too. You couldn't get me on one now.
That's true, but no.
You're more fearless. That's what I mean. Like you're more fearless. You're not as, because everything's a wonder.
I stood outside for 20 minutes watching a craft come down, and I just watched it. I didn't feel any anxiety, and disappeared behind the tree line in the mountains. I knew where it was because there were a couple of lakes back there. And all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, like it was really slow and going down, which was a curiosity, but I watched it. It was like wintertime, whatever. And then literally within about 10 minutes after that, the thing shot right up out like into the sky, stopped, and then took off on an angle, and then it went gone. Next day, we had like military helicopters everywhere because, obviously caught some attention. But I'm out there going, this is bloody amazing. Wow, look at this thing. The thought that something or someone would come in and like maybe somebody grab me I don't know, but I was pretty excited about it. Maybe I was abducted. I have no freaking clue. All I know is I just had a complete sense of awe that I was watching, because as a child I used to watch the skies all the time because I am a contactee, right? And it was just like one of those moments where I'm thinking I'm actually experiencing it now.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a dozen close-up sightings, and probably more than that. I mean, I did have missing time and, at least one fully conscious onboard experience.
Right.
And every single experience I had is great. I loved it.
Right.
Thrilling, wonderful. I couldn't be happier.
Right.
Yes, Amelia, it's true.
No, thank you. No, I'm not saying good for you. I'm happy for you. If that's what makes you happy, I want you to be happy.
Thank you.
That's
I
because
want you to
Amelia's
be happy
convinced
too.
that this never happened to her.
I
Yes, it has.
personally prefer to live through the experience of others in the situation.
Yeah, I
So
understand that.
I have a
Nothing wrong
lot
with
of
that.
fear, and it's really bizarre because you would think with the stuff that Michelle and I do that would not be the thing that scares me.
You know what's so funny is I've interviewed a lot of contactees, and not super often, but it keeps coming up. I'm like, have you seen any ghosts? Because I like to embrace the whole thing, right? It comes along with that. They're like, oh, I hate ghosts. I can't stand them. It scares. I don't like it. It scares me so bad.
Right.
Wait a second. So you went on board, you met ETs, but
right? See, so we're polar opposites, but that's okay. You can live vicariously through me, and I'll live vicariously through you, Dolly and Michelle. It's that fear for me. I think it's the control thing. Like I'm not an excessive drinker. I don't partake in recreational drugs. I don't, you know what I mean? I need to be in control at all times. It bothers me that I need a sleeping aid. It bothers me because I know once it hits, I don't remember the first half hour before that. Pardon? No, I missed that.
I said it makes it easier for them to come in and grab you because you
right
easy that way. See,
but I think I'm just too quick on my feet for them.
I would say that's the number one complaint with people who have a hard time with this is the feeling of loss of control.
Yes.
And you're next to a being who's clearly, got more abilities and can do things we can't do. And, I mean, one lady, she told me, I felt I was going to be snuffed out of existence by just standing in their presence.
Wow.
Yeah. Preston, I get on a plane and I want to interview the pilots in the cockpit. Like that is how controlling I am. I want to know who my pilot is, how long they've been flying. If I can find out, I want to know because you're putting your life in the hands of a stranger. And that's the fear with me is taking me. And do I get to come back? You hear so many stories about people coming back with their clothes on backwards 5 years later and they're the same age. Now I can take that. That's a lot of savings on Botox. I can take that. But it's like, really? It scares. It's those stories that stick with me. The military interference that sticks with me. The fear of knowing too much. Is scary. The fear of knowing too much, the fear of my own gifts without saying too much.
I'm
right?
Leo.
Pardon?
I'm with Leo. They should know by now what you're going to drink. Pouring a bottle of wine will get more things done. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's really, really frightening for me. It really is. I love listening. I love especially talking with you because I never feel like an idiot when I'm speaking
you're
to
not
you.
Alone with that. I mean, I didn't interview this guy, but this is a case that took place in Brazil, I think, and I was just interested in it because he's driving along and has this UFO following his car, and it comes right down behind his car, about a foot off the road, one car length behind, and follows him into this town. This was in Ituperuna, Brazil. Probably not pronouncing that right. So he rushes into the police station, says, this thing followed me. And they're like, yeah, sure it did. He's like, no, for real. And they said, well, if you're so scared, why don't you just spend the night in town? He's like, no, I have to get home. He relaxed, got back on the road. And of course, this craft came down again, started circling his car, landed on the road in front of him. His car failed, put a beam of light on his car. The doors pop open and he's pulled right into the craft. And he said it was scary, very scary. He was sweating profusely. All they did was examine him. They showed him an image of the city blowing up in a nuclear bomb. So I think that's the warnings that we often get. And put him back in his car. And it turned out, he went to the police again. And they're like, well, that's funny. This guy came to the police too. Driving just a couple of miles down the road, same craft. It was a little tiny Volkswagen-sized craft. And the ETs lifted him up 100 feet in the air, and another car came, and so they put him back down.
Oh my gosh.
That first guy ended up being taken 4 or 5 times and having a whole series of experiences, and photographed them and developed into a full-on, contactee kind of experience.
Right.
But yeah, initially very scary.
Yeah.
Well, okay, here's a scary one. I want to put this in 2 parts. Bubbles, you ready for this?
Yes.
Bubbles is going to disappear for a minute. There's a big comment.
It's okay. It's even better because I look like Mr. Wilson from Full Time.
Okay, part 1.
Okay. Sunsaver says, my experience was they were planning to eat me. I somehow overheard their thoughts, followed by an argument about whose fault it was that I was escaping. The leader of the Greys, said, stop arguing. Get after him. He's getting away. Thanks, at Scarlet Fire.
So that's like pretty
That's a
damn
first for me.
That's frightening. That's frightening.
Well, and then you wonder why I
But
don't
is that
want
a
to do
thing?
this. Dolly says my lab.
Yeah, that's possible. I would ask a whole series of questions. Is there military in your family? Are you next to a military base? Have you had a history of encounters?
That's a questionnaire. That's an interview.
There's a whole list of things. Have you gotten anything good out of them? Were they all negative? But I haven't talked to this person.
It's hard to say.
Interview, so it's very hard for me to comment.
Well, I can say this, though, Preston, the connection, when you ask in your questionnaire, do you have military in your family or connected to somebody, friends, family, that sort of thing? Do you know that throughout the last 2 decades of working in the paranormal, at least half of those people have had UFO, extraterrestrial contact as well. And out of those 50%, I would say, I'm going to be conservative and say half of them had military connections in there, and they were having horrific, malevolent experiences to which they believed were paranormal.
Isn't that interesting?
Right.
There's always, let's face it, there's still a lot of questions surrounding this.
Yeah, you just triggered that with me when you were mentioning that.
And that military thing is a question I have learned to always ask. Have you had unexplained injuries, unexplained healings, weird marks on your body, all the different things that can be a part of this experience.
That's not a dog, son. That's a pony barking.
Yeah, she's part horse.
That's a pony.
I know. She's a good girl, though.
I have a friend who just has Great Danes. Yeah. They're huge.
I love them.
They sit on a love seat.
We never mind when the fur faces come in. It's always good.
She takes me for walks. I don't take her.
I know. Who's the handler here? Preston or
She would be fun to take her leash tied around your waist and put on a pair of roller skates and go down a hill. She would make that a lot of fun because if you go flying, you just jump up and you can ride her to the end.
I made the mistake of trying to play with her once, and she jumped higher than me. She's taller than me. Yeah. She weighs as much as I do. I'm not kidding.
It's crazy.
She's beautiful. She's beautiful. They're so sweet.
She's a rescue.
I love animals. So, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So, see, okay, right here, this is pertaining to the last 2 comments we read. Can you get that, Amelia?
Yeah, I can, because that one I can scroll down and see on the side.
Okay, all right, good.
Says, my father was in the U.S. Navy. I have had other sightings of UFOs that were more benign, and at least one sighting that seemed almost friendly, an orb. The attempted abduction happened in 1975.
Okay, so
Well,
there's your
maybe.
connection to.
Well, I can say this. People who are contactees often are known by the military or the folks behind the MyLabs, and they will target you in an attempt to turn you against the ETs and have this whole negative narrative put forth, because that's their agenda. This is what our secret governments are spending your tax dollars on. No joke. This is a very serious thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it muddies the waters, and that's putting it nicely.
Right.
Because people will suddenly no, I don't want to have ET encounters anymore because this is what's happening to me. And ET encounters might be absolutely friendly, but let's face it, sometimes people just want to live a normal life. They don't want this.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't. I talked to a couple who turned out they married each other without knowing that they were both, quote, abductees. But he just had enough of it. And when these cat-like beings appeared one evening, he's like, that's it, go away. I never want to see you again. Stop it. Why are you doing this? Go away, go away, go away. And that was it. He never had another experience.
Right.
So I've talked to people who have ended their encounters that way. Often what will usually happen is they'll go away for 5 or 10 years and then come back like, are you ready now?
Right.
Not in so many words, but I think that's exactly what's going on.
I agree with you because I had a lot of paranormal experiences growing up, but I also know that I had a complete fascinations with ET and crafts. And I know now because I was a contactee, well, more, but we'll leave it at contactee. And I found out from my mother that throughout their family, my grandfather, it went back, my father, all negative blood types, just saying, it's just if that is a curiosity with some of the connections as well. But, and I somehow, everything just went silent and I had all of this paranormal stuff going on. And of course, it put me into the field. And it wasn't until literally 4 years ago where, I'm like, okay, because they started resurfacing in my life again, or let's just say they were resurfacing to the point where I was recognizing things, right? I may have been seeing them for years, but if you don't know what it is, or you're not looking for it, and you don't have an understanding of it, you don't really know what you're looking at, or seeing, or experiencing. I mean, who knows? Maybe I was taken the whole time.
We're especially good at denial, and
it's
mentalizing and explaining away.
Yeah, it's like,
if
no,
you're not ready for it, you're just not going to go there.
Exactly. But a few years ago, I kind of said, okay, and Bubbles and I worked over that whole fear thing. Like, I am not impressed with this crap going on in my boudoir.
And I'm like, don't talk to them that way. What if they're not nice?
I know, right? I'm just like, no. But I made the decision in my mind, and I telepathically reached out, which tells me there was already that connection. And I said, okay, I'm fine now. And then it was almost instantly, bam, 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 bam.
You were fine. You were fine after that. You really were. She was calm. She was like, I've got control of this. I'm good.
But you see, it was my decision.
Mindset.
Yeah, mindset. And I didn't feel like it was being pushed on me.
One lady I know who was having encounters for a while, didn't realize it until she saw Billy Meyer, the Swiss farmer on TV and all the crafts. She's like, oh my God. It opened a dam. All these memories came flooding. She started having conscious encounters, lost her mind, didn't like it. I may have told you about her before, but she had grays appear around her bed, and she kicked one in the neck, broke its neck. They pulled her on
board. Did it retaliate?
No, they just left. But
they're like, oh, this one's got Taekwondo. I'm out of here.
She's a feisty one. Okay. But
maybe that's why they don't come here.
They pulled her on board once, and she woke up in the middle, up in the sky, halfway to the craft. She's like, what are you doing? Put me down now. I did not give you the right to do this. What are you doing? I don't like this. And they're all in complete shock. And they put her back in her bed. So she was fighting. She would put up booby traps around the bed, tacks on the floor.
See, Michelle, maybe that's why they don't come to me, because I'm kickbox trained.
Well, that could be it.
No, maybe it's the stilettos that you keep next to the bed.
It's the reaction, right? I can kick in those too, but I mean, like,
With the stiletto.
I wonder sometimes,
Like,
you know,
he'll
like
shoot.
growing up in the city, you know what I mean? Being trained in box, like, I wonder if that has anything to do with it.
It might be. If you're super hard, you know, resistant.
Well,
we got a problem child
I like
here.
to say I'm street smart. I like to say I grew up being street smart, and I'm still that way, and taught my daughter to be that way, even though she's a country bumpkin and we live out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Well,
Amelia, they have your mind. What do you mean they have my mind?
They hear
you. They hear. Sorry, the glasses should have been on when I read that. They hear my mind, so then they know that I don't want this. You have a choice.
But you know, if it's your doctor and they have a problem that they need to heal you with, and you don't want it, you know, what are they going to keep? They're going to try. They're going to keep doing their best.
I want them to heal my daughter.
Yeah, I agree. I wish they would heal everyone.
Yeah.
So I could use a few.
I do too. I mean, I really do. It's just, if I would put her before me at any time, and I would let them research whatever they needed to with me to heal her.
I think from a very high spiritual level, we kind of all choose our life path, and some of us choose really hard challenges.
Me too.
So I don't know. It's that's deep stuff to get into.
Yeah. I cried enough today. but yeah.
Going back to this lady, what happened with her, she ended up being healed of a cyst in her fallopian tubes, and she learned how to do healing and energy work and all this stuff. But she's like trying to develop a relationship, you know, with these ETs. She's like, okay, come down. I think I'm ready. And she heard them coming down her hallway. She's lying in her bed. She's like, okay. Her heart starts thumping. She's like, gosh, I'm not sure if I'm ready. And it takes its hand and comes it around the doorway and puts its big long fingers around the doorway and starts to peek. And she screams out at it, no, I'm not ready. Go away. And it went away. But it was kind of, I mean, she looks back at it laughing, but at the time she says it was absolutely horrifying. It was very scary for her.
It is intrusive. I can understand that. I've felt them come in at times, and I've just had, you know what it is like when you have a really long day, and I'm like, I have a headache. Wait for me to fall asleep. I'm like, okay, I'll go work. I'll do whatever. Just let me fall asleep first, and whatever goes. No, I'm kidding, but yeah, you know, like I have a headache. Don't feel like going.
When you have,
I try to be comical about it, and they're very good about it.
When you both and Dolly have these experiences that, you know, you're with them or you're on board, is it kind of like astral where you wake up and you know you haven't really slept? Or do they release you peacefully and make sure that you're rested?
I wasn't tired at all. You know?
Okay.
And when I have astral experiences, I come back super
exhausted.
Energized. No.
Oh,
energized.
Astral?
Yeah.
Astral, I come back burnt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, completely toast.
Wow. Well, each person's experience is different, but yeah. I don't know. For some weird reason, I don't have fear of this stuff. Not even ghosts or big. I had a Bigfoot encounter. I ran towards the darn thing.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And
when
ghost activity happens, I'm like amazed. I'm like, wow, look at this. This is awesome.
Yeah.
You have a haunted house for a lot of years, or I mean, I grew up in one, and you know, we had the manor house was like just a revolving door of crazy stuff that you just get used to. I agree with you. I think it's a mindset.
No, there's the cat.
I just see it.
I'm gonna have a bath right here in front of all your viewers.
Oh, I love it. Love it.
I know. Cats are bloody aliens. I'm telling you.
They're their own. They definitely are. They have their own planet.
They think they own this planet.
Yeah.
We're their people. We're supposed to do what they tell us to, what they want. Serve me, take care of me.
Wasn't it Alf The alien that
Ate cats, yeah.
and he learned to become friendly
Oh,
with the cat in the house.
sure, because he went to eat them. Here we go. Here's a question.
Right. Okay. Let me just roll that down because it'll be easier for me to read it from here. Okay. Michael Kennedy. Hi, Michael. Given the recent release of Stanley Kubrick's confession on video of his why did new comments have to come and do that to me? Okay, of Stanley Kubrick's confession on video of his involvement of directing and filming of a film that became the moon landing. What references can make? Sorry, I am okay.
Inferences.
Toast inferences. Thank you. I can't see. I'm literally blind. I should never have spoken up.
Well,
sorry about that, Michael. Yes.
Well, we read them out just for our audio listeners.
I certainly looked into the moon landings because I talked to this guy who was on the ship that picked up the astronauts. I mean, I think there's no doubt we went to the moon. If you look into it, the evidence of that, it's absolutely overwhelming. It's provable. You can go, there's a mirror up there that you can shine, they're shining a laser at so they know exactly how far the moon is. People watched the Gemini and Apollo missions go around the Earth and to the moon. There's enough people who worked on that project that this would be impossible to pull off as a complete hoax. Mm-hmm. However, we found stuff up in the moon. No doubt about it. This is what the guy I talked to, who was a petty photographer on one of the ships, they bumped him up to top secret, put him in the capsule with the astronauts as they picked him up. And he got their cameras footage. He developed all this stuff, and there were alien bases and structures of all kinds. And he says the astronauts were losing their minds because they saw all this stuff. And they filmed it. And this is one of the reasons they went up there, because they wanted this material. Mm-hmm. And this is why when you try to get the moon rocks from NASA and try to pin it down, what they brought back, it's very difficult because they were bringing back stuff they don't want anyone to know about.
Right.
They were filming stuff they didn't want anyone to know about. Right. So I think some of these missions they're like, well, you know what? We have to release something. We can't show them this footage. And this is going to come out one day. Mark my words. This is going to be explosive. And it already has to a certain extent. Anyone who's in this field knows about this. So I think some of the moon landing footage was faked. I really do.
Well, let's face it. Which Apollo mission was it where the astronauts, I guess,
the 18
heard that the moon, when something hit the ground, it resonated, and they're like, okay, like this is hollow. Like they could hear it, like a boom. Well, if you're not on the moon, how would you hear that?
There's a lot of stuff that we're not being told. They're finding out now there's a lot more water up there than we thought.
Yeah.
The moon rocks themselves are composed of oxygen, which I'm like, what? Is that true? How can that be? Look it up. It's true.
And what about the Apollo 18 film? Speaking of the Apollo films, where they had those little things and they brought them back. Is there any truth to that? Or is this purely fantasy in Hollywood?
Yeah,
where they had those little creatures.
I think that's probably disinformation. I don't know for sure. This is not my area of expertise.
Right.
I did actually write a book on all of this stuff, which never got published. One day I'm going to go back to it. But I sent it to Berkeley Books, and they're like, this is really good. We really considered this. It got all the way to the top editor's desk. But ultimately, they decided that people weren't ready for it.
Right.
But if you look into the history of it, there's something called transient lunar phenomena, TLP, lights on the moon. It's super well verified. These are, the landscape will change, light patterns that are not meteors hitting it or anything, because they're in actual intelligent patterns. And there's not 100 cases of this. There's thousands. The Royal Astronomical Society in England said, stop sending us these reports. We know about them. Look up any book on the moon, transient lunar phenomena. Scientifically verified, and we don't know what it is. The moon's not seismically active.
Is there a country that's stands out for the amount of research they do regarding our planetary system?
Well, the main superpowers, or what we would call the superpowers, I think they're all cooperating. It's very interesting to me that the Apollo missions suddenly ended very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the inside sources, we were basically told, "You're done. You are not going out any farther. You guys are too dangerous." We were planning on exploding nuclear weapons on the moon. They were not going to have that.
And what is it about dark side of the moon? Why do we always hear? I'm asking for me personally, because I hear people talk about it, but I don't understand why there's so much interest in it. Do you believe they went to that side, and like how else would they know it was dark?
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of hooked the imagination of the people and certainly governments as well, because we can't see it.
No. So how would you know it's dark unless you
we
went
wanna know
over
what's
that
there.
side?
And we just wanted to take a look at it. And they've mapped the moon. They've mapped every square inch of this darn thing.
Yeah.
And we know from some NASA insiders that they were airbrushing this stuff out. The air bases and the stuff they found on there. And the guy I talked to, he said absolutely. He saw enough photographs. He developed about 1% of what the astronauts took, because he said it was just room after room after room after room of footage, and it would take years to develop. And he tried. He actually snuck like 4 or 5 photos out, and they were taken away from him. But he swears
if
up and
only
down
they
there's
had the
stuff up there.
staff to do that. I think they've done it, and they're just keeping quiet.
Yeah, well,
There's
How
a
would they
show
know to
about it
come
right
after
now
stuff?
on Amazon. I'm trying to find. We've watched it. It's all about the moon. There's even and again, it's just a lot. It's a lot of theory.
it's gonna come out one day. I tell you,
It makes a lot of sense. But they mentioned something on here, and I wish I could find the name of it. I tried to look at it, but apparently if you watch something completely, it disappears from your Prime list because you watched it. So you have to quit halfway through, and then it keeps reminding you to watch it. But there's a mention of 2 large iron poles that are placed in 2 different areas. If Wayne's on here, Wayne, if you're listening, if you can just sort of jot it down, because I know you're up in there somewhere. But it was basically, they were put there with a sign that says the day the moon arrived.
Well, yeah. If you look into the history of the moon, there are ancient writings that make no mention of the moon
Right.
whatsoever.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, scientists,
Alien moon
scientists
is
are
what
still
it's
trying
called.
to figure out
Okay.
the
Alien
origins
moon.
of it. And one of the main theories is that something crashed into the Earth, and out came a bunch of the Earth and started rotating around it.
Yeah.
Others feel like, no, this was captured at some point. And I
We
think
need a field trip.
What, to the moon?
Joel, let us go.
Like, oh, okay.
Come on, contact your
get
ET
people field trips
friends.
to the moon all the time.
Right.
Like if you're an abductee, can't you go there?
Yeah.
Well,
That's what I mean. So
who's to
why
say
can't
we
we do a
don't?
field trip?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's to say
I mean,
we don't?
Dolly
I'm not being
Saffron did it.
sarcastic. I'm being
Kevin Cannon did it. I've talked to a number of people who've seen the moon on board a UFO.
There it
the
is.
Earth behind it. They will show you that. Not at all
not landed.
unusual.
So this is about the iron pole. If you can get that, Amelia.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course I can.
There's
That
2
one
of
I can
these.
reach.
Yeah, 2 of these.
Okay. Sorry.
One of them.
Crazy. I'm trying. There's so much in the chat room.
Okay.
It's scrolling. I got it. One iron pole is in India and doesn't rust. And apparently either does any of the iron that was brought back from the moon. I didn't know iron was, wow.
I've never heard this, so that's kind of interesting.
There's 2 of them. Yeah, and he says the name of the show is called, it's Alien Moon.
Oh, wow.
It's on Amazon Prime. Go check it out. It talks about all of that. And we just sat there kind of going, so here it is right here. Can you get that?
Yep, I can. There are now 2 known writings that speak of the moon arriving into Earth's orbit One is in Egypt.
Okay.
The other one escapes me. One is it. I've heard people talk about moons in Egypt.
Yeah. So the day like the moon arriving into Earth's orbit. So I don't know. It's just that's how we started the show. Basically, was the fact that so much has been kept from us, and now we're at this point where we have so much speculation, and we really have to rely on eyewitness accounts and experiencers, like all the stories that you tell, all of the people that you're in contact
Said
with.
that many times, don't look to our governments for answers. That's a huge mistake.
Right.
And everything we really know about ETs comes from the contactees, people like Dolly Safran or Kevin Kamen or all the people I've interviewed.
It's like whistleblowers. They know the truth.
Right. It's
the same thing. Only these people have their contactees and whistleblowers work for them. So yeah, it makes total sense. I don't believe anything that is out there regarding our, with the ETs or with the planets that comes out on MSM or anything that comes. I don't want to say too much that will get snagged using the GOVT, but I would never believe anything that they say, especially after what we've been through the last few years.
Yeah, well, I think that's why.
Yeah.
Really, only true knowledge comes only from personal experience and sifting through. I mean, they call it the information age, but we're kind of past that now. It's the disinformation age.
It absolutely is. And we know that just by being online.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, again, we're into this point where Dolly made a good point as well. We're getting into a time of false flags. Dolly actually asked something up here. I want to go back and grab it. Oh, Doxy, sorry. So we're going to backtrack just a minute. Doxy.
Okay. Oh, yes. What do my lab do?
Yeah. Well, first I would say it's spelled MILAB, which is an acronym for military abductions. And so MILAB, that's what it stands for. And what they basically do is use mind control, psychotronics, drugs, hypnotism, and all the nefarious techniques to fake a quote ET abduction. And I'll use that word because that's exactly what they're doing. And they will make it very negative. And it's all staged. And it's very intricate and advanced, and they do every technique they can. And if you look into, what's it? Not MJ12 so much. There's another word for it. The program, magic or whatever it is, that they basically did mind control experiments very early on. Learned how to turn people into multiple personalities and have them do triggers where they would assassinate people. And I mean, they can control a person.
Like Manchurian.
Yeah. And this is just what we know that's been leaked out. So there are a lot of people out there who are really having a hard time dealing with this.
Right.
And this is how muddied the waters are. And when I came into this field, I was horrified. I'm like, oh my gosh, UFOs are abducting people and experimenting on them. These bug-like ETs, they have no feelings. There's a cover-up. This is horrible news. And it wasn't until I started interviewing people myself and getting that firsthand information and seeing UFOs myself, so I knew they were real, and having interactions with them, that I did my 180-degree turnaround. I'm like, okay, half the stuff out there is not true.
Right.
And there are some very prominent researchers and I'll put big air quotes around them, experiencers, I think are flat out lying. Just flat out lying. It's not true.
I agree.
Yeah.
And
I agree. And I think that if you pay attention when they're speaking, you can see it, because believe it or not, stories do change. And there are video clips And it amazes me how often the story will change if you go back a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And some
And
people
you
go
start
under
listening to
hypnosis.
audio and all of their stuff that they have,
You know, there are some people go under hypnosis and the researcher is negative and minded, and they come out with a terrible, horrific abduction story, because hypnosis used improperly can lead you right down a path of disinformation with your own experience. It's really unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't generally recommend hypnosis because of that. Try writing it down first. Try meditating. Try doing dream work. Hypnosis does work. I think Barbara Lamb does a really good job, and she'll tell you in her own words that, yeah, some of this stuff is probably not accurate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I know it works because a lot of what people recall is exactly what people recall consciously.
Mm-hmm.
And you can predict what's going to happen to a person when they're taken on board. Yeah, you might be physically examined. Probably you will be. You might not like it. Who likes going to the doctor? No one, not a lot of people.
Ask the dog how he feels about going to the vet and getting that thermometer. So,
right?
I mean, it's sort of the same idea. Not that I'm comparing us to dogs, but I'm just saying, like if you're going for an examination, and if they're helping people, or if they're trying to get information, most of the time, nobody really enjoys a physical exam, like Preston said, even from your family doctor. But getting back to what you said about going out and plant something and being out in nature, I find that a lot of contactees who are connected, like when I started reopening myself up, I decided to start doing planetary energy work, that I do, with other people that I've done over the years, the last handful of years. And it's just, you just get this sense of wanting to protect the planet and, do well for others, and more so on a different level. And it's just hard to explain, because if you do it, you understand. If you don't do it, you don't understand really the need that you feel to do it, the urgency of doing it.
It's hard to follow through on things when you see your own leaders drinking from plastic water bottles, about protecting that. That's a tough one. It has to come from the top if you want people to follow. I'm huge on recycling, but more because it's the waste. It doesn't make any sense. Like even a Keurig cup, I will empty the grounds out and put the plastic in recycling. Not everybody goes to that extent. They'll just toss it. Yeah. But if it doesn't start up here, because you're seeing them on television, you're seeing them with their water bottles, and you're seeing them with it's a lot of waste at that level, and they'll write it off that because it's the position of government. BS. It has to start up here so that everybody else
follows like a contactee, Amelia.
Oh, shoot.
You are, I'm telling you.
I just thought I was passionate because I've always been that way. And I grew up, I was born in 1969. I grew up in the 70s, where you were covering your books with grocery bags. It was just a way of life. And that's all it was. Everything was in glass. I have a problem with plastic, not just the recycling. For me, it's the ocean, the animals. It breaks my heart when I see turtles and
we had Captain Paul Watson on the show, and he really went into a lot of detail about the damage that we're all doing.
You can watch it on National Geo, right? Like it's so heartbreaking, and you can't understand how the plastic is the size of our continent in the ocean that's just floating around. This is insanity. And why is it there?
It's in our blood now. I mean, it's in our bodies.
It's awful. And a lot of the plastic, that what I don't like about it is when plastic came around, and I don't mean to take away from ET, because I think this is a message they're trying to give as well. When plastic came around, the rise in cancer was astronomical.
Yep. And we can make plastic now that's organic and biodegradable.
Yeah.
And I went into dead shock when I started reading the ingredients and realized that a good portion of the food I was eating was GMO, genetically modified.
That's why I want to move to Italy. That does not stand there.
I have
That
food
does
in a
not
box that I'm not
stand
going to eat now, which I bought. I'm like, well, shoot.
Yeah.
Darn it. You know,
And that's the problem with Canada is even if we take GMOs out and Monsanto's not a thing, it is in some provinces, it's not. The problem is we're still taking stuff, importing it in, our exports. We can't control that. And people are forgetting to read their produce bags. They're protesting plastic, but they're buying cucumbers and carrots in plastic bags.
Yep.
There's a lot to that. So I think there's a big message in that as well. And I hope if that's part of what's happening to abductees, that they get the word across.
It's a big part of being a contactee for sure. They are environmentalists. In fact, this is one thing that I'm really proud of is like people are always like, who's get contacted and why? And people are like, well, this person's blood type and, this person lives in this area. They have a history of contact in the family. Yeah, these certain commonalities. But one thing I noticed is the people who are having contact are doing good work for humanity in some capacity. And I think I want to take credit for that. I'm not entirely sure if I'm the first to say this, but I've certainly been saying it for a while. I noticed a lot of social workers, a lot of environmentalists, a lot of human rights activists, animal rights activists, doctors, nurses, teachers, artists, musicians, people who are just trying real hard to do the right thing.
I trust you. You've done enough interviews to know.
And I don't hear other investigators saying this. And I'm like, well, here's one of the reasons, look at your people who you're talking to. Ask what they've done to help the world. And it's amazing to hear, like, gosh, there was that guy who said he planted like 500,000 trees. What's his name? He's full-on contactee, but he's like, I'm on a mission. He's like Johnny Appleseed.
Right. Yeah. Just plant away, do your part,
I have rows of trees that don't even need to be beside each other in the front of my house, but I'm happy.
So I had seen a comment come up and I just want to address it. Do all extraterrestrials, or let's say aliens, just to lump it up a little bit, do they all come from space? Or I say dimensional, interdimensional, but
it's a trick
do
question.
we have right here on good old planet Earth, I guess is where I'm going.
Earth's been around for a very, very, very long time. We're not the first civilization. There's this term called breakaway civilization, which I thought was kind of intriguing.
Right.
But I think it's also a little bit misleading because, a long, long time ago, all kinds of things were going on 1 billion years ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I'm going to stick to my guns with this. We're dealing with extraterrestrials, physical beings, people like us, who are, like us, interdimensional. And there are people who are absolutely spiritually enlightened on this planet living today who can levitate, turn invisible, teleport, do healing, all kinds of things that we see ETs doing. And people are like, well, look, they're interdimensional. Well, yeah. That doesn't mean they're not ETs. It doesn't preclude them from being time travelers either.
Right.
They're all of these things.
Right.
And are they from Earth? Well, probably been on Earth longer than us.
Right.
For visiting it and perhaps in some cases having bases here.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a trick question. I'm going to say yes.
Right. Right. Well, we're not the first kick at the can here. That's for sure. We're not the first civilization on this planet.
Couldn't we have a better name for them though? Like ET is, for me, it's harsh, and so is alien. I don't know.
That's why I say extraterrestrial most of the time.
Yeah.
But I reworded it because of the fact that extraterrestrial means off planet.
Yeah, I see ET all the time as well. I want to. Yeah, right. I agree with you. I want to correct myself. I just wish that I didn't use it. It bothers me in some way. It feels offensive.
One lady, she called them creatures and said, we don't like that term. Call us Martians.
Right.
Martian. In Italian, you say creaturi, and that means any creation, whether human, animal, or alien. Creaturi is
I like
very
non-human.
respectful.
Yeah, non-human.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
understand the resistance to the idea of extraterrestrials, because there are some really high-profile researchers who are very well educated and very experienced.
Mhm.
I'm saying, you know what? I don't think they're ETs. I'm like, hold on a second, because there are all these theories floating around. And I wonder about these guys, because have you actually had an experience? You know, if you've actually met them, it's hard to walk away from the fact that this is a person like you who might look a little different. I did a whole thing, a study on the smell of UFOs,
Mhm.
which I thought was super revealing, because what it showed was there's two types of odors. You could classify them. One is sort of electric or chemical, which kind of pointed to the high electrical fields surrounding the craft and the metallic stuff inside and instrumentation and that sort of thing. But organic odors, over and over again, people go on board and they're like, well, it smells like a locker room in here, or it smells
Really?
cheesy, or
Right.
they smell. You can smell the ETs themselves.
So they're
Right.
not Floro and Chanel.
No, they're woodsy.
I have to lighten things up
Woodsy
when I'm
is
nervous. They're woodsy. Oud. Oud, right?
We have to take a quick break. Station sponsor
Oh,
and
yes,
station
yes.
ID, please, if you will.
I'm just having so much fun though, Mom. Like,
I know it's easy to roll right through it. I know. I've done it. I've done it.
I am so tongue-tied and twisted today, but forgive me. You are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano, coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 105.3 and 107.7 FM radio, as well as you can now watch us, and you have been able to watch us for the last few months on the Roku channel. You can stream us on all of our Facebook group pages as well. Our guest tonight is a very dear friend and colleague, Preston Dennett, the godfather of all ET. That's what we're going to call you, the ET godfather.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. Snoop Dogg's got the dog father. We are calling Preston the ET godfather, your alien godfather. We'll figure it out. Write in, let us know. Well, write to me. Don't write to Michelle. Not enough emails. If you're just tuning in, no worries, because you can stream our archives on any platform that you normally stream your music or your podcasts on. You can find us there. Just start by looking for United Public Radio, and then you can find The Outer Realm. Remember to click like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And don't forget to share us with your friends and family. To the wonderful people at Folgers Coffee for your continued support in sponsoring our show from day one to now. We appreciate you so much. We love you, and we thank you so, so much for letting us be here and do our thing. And thank you so much for tuning in. We hear that. Jill tells us that you often watch, and we're really grateful. Our fabulous banner and promo media is a huge thank you to Steve McGinnis, who is a horror illustrator. He's a fantastic artist who can create any commission pieces, and he can be found on Facebook. If you love our intro, and when we get the chance, our outro, thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, award-winning composer, vocalist, and musician. You can find his music on Amazon and Bandcamp. Stream again on any platform that you normally stream your music on. You can also find Dr. Snick on social media. He's on Facebook and Instagram, and he's constantly dropping little videos that are really cool, and his music. Now, if you're watching us live right now on Facebook or on YouTube, please make sure to, again, give us a like, subscribe, and don't forget to share with your friends and family. Don't forget to hit that notification button so that you never miss a show.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. God, is a mouthful, wasn't it?
It is, isn't it? That's why it's written up in an email, because I can't remember it.
I know, I'm just tired listening to it. It's like, oh my God,
Because,
a lot of work.
yeah, it's twice a week.
Oh, I know. We have a question here. Can you get that?
Yes, I can. Preston, do you think that the government tend to follow the lives of those who have been visited?
Yes, I do. The secret government. I won't say it's not your senators or the president. It's the people behind the cover-up. Absolutely are aware. This is a subject they take super seriously. They're probably watching this program. I think that I'm not kidding. I think that they watch everything, anything to do with UFOs. any buzzword that comes up that's alien, extraterrestrial, UFO, contactee, abductee, that goes through the email system, Twitter, Instagram, all of it. And if you are a contactee who's having regular contact, for sure they are visiting you and following you. I've watched it happen. I know that this to be true from personal experience. So a big, big yes on that. And I've had problems myself. I mean, I did get a somewhat threatening phone call from a guy who said he was a top secret government guy. I've had real honest to God phone problems, email hacks. I lived in a secure building in a condominium complex, and this was before the internet, and I was sending out a manuscript a week to various magazines. I mean, you know how gung-ho I am with this.
Right.
My mail was coming back opened. So I brought my sister, because I would get mail back every day, from rejections usually, but something. And I'm like, okay, I want you to open up my mailbox. We went into the secure building. It's a locked mailbox. I'm like, tell me what you think of my mail. She's like, well, it's all opened. I'm like, yeah, only the UFO stuff. Who's doing that?
Right.
Who stopped their car when I was walking outside my car? Stopped the car in the middle of the street, took my picture. I looked behind me because, why would you want to take a picture of me? I'm just, a guy. But no, they watch over UFO researchers. We know this to be true too, because some UFO researchers dug into that and found his own file. And it was thick.
They want to be aware of what you're releasing. They want to know what you know and what you're talking about.
I had one guy come right up to my table.
All in the chat room as well. So just saying.
Yeah. Hey, ask me anything. I've got nothing to hide. And one guy did. He walked right up to me and he had this suit and tie. You get a feel for these guys. They're very slick and they're very not, you can tell.
Right.
And he's like, so what do you got going on? What's new? I'm like, what do you want to know? I'm looking at him. I knew who he was.
I'm an open book. About 50, actually. Right.
I'm sure they've read them all and they know Preston's schedule as soon as Preston knows it.
So,
hi guys.
Here's this. Yeah.
Remember to drink Folgers while you're listening to the show, guys.
Do you think? I mean, it's a tough question, but do you think that you've been picked up by them at any point?
Government folk? No, I don't have any. Well, there's been not so much picked up, but my family was in the movie business and really gung-ho, and my brother Jamie, who's now passed on, said, I got a guy for you. He's a CIA agent and he's got some documents he'd love to pass on. You want to meet with him? And I'm like, oh, well, okay. And ended up driving down to Santa Monica and sitting in his car next to this guy. Stupid. I was young and reckless, I guess. But I took one look at this guy and he just gave me a cold shiver. I didn't like him. Wow. And he handed over this stack of documents. And I kind of just played dumb a little bit. And then he got on the phone. He says, well, I don't need to just want you to know I don't need to do the job in LA. And he gave me this look like I'm the job in LA.
Oh, nice.
I'm like, oh, okay, you're going to assassinate me. Is that what you're...
Wow.
So it was kind of
I'm not surprised.
I looked through all the documents, and this was right when the MJ-12 documents were coming out. And they were there. Right. I'm like, oh, well, look at this. I don't believe this one. And it was filled with misinformation and disinformation, particularly about that really dastardly piece of misinformation, which is that our government sold us down the river in exchange for ET technology and allowing, quote, abductions. That's the worst piece of disinformation in this whole field. I don't like it. I don't think it's true.
Right.
That was in there.
Wow. I
actually called up the guy who started that rumor. And he's like, yeah, it's true. I'm like, yeah, sure it is.
Prove it.
Wow.
And John Lear, that's the guy. That's where I traced that down to. I'm not sure if he's the one, but he put out a big old article, and I found it again in an old UFO magazine. This whole setup that people bought hook, line, and sinker.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't provide any backup information to say that this happened.
Right.
Prove it.
Can't you just go into the old, if you go online, the old FBI, the vault, and look at all the old vault files?
Well, more and more documents are coming out, but I still
Yeah.
think it's very carefully controlled. Every single thing that's declassified.
You know it.
Because look
If
what
it's
happened
not
to.
redacted, they just remove the info, the content. You don't even know because you
But
never
there's
knew
still
what it
stuff.
originally said.
There's still stuff in there, though. Like, look at the Nikola Tesla thing. I mean, but we've talked about this before. There is in the vault a document that clearly states that Nikola Tesla was brought to the Tesla family from beings from Venus, and they would check on him periodically because Venus was actually believed to be a technology race of beings, which would make sense if you look at what Nikola Tesla was. So, what are your thoughts on that? I mean,
Yeah.
do you believe it?
I think Tesla was amazing. I think he's the most underrated scientist out there. And certainly a lot of people now are coming around and realizing he was the real deal.
Yeah.
If his technology that he was looking into hadn't been suppressed, we would be living in a completely different place. But yeah, it was all scooped up and covered up.
Right.
And I don't think we've seen most of what
Right.
he was researching.
Right. Right. Do you believe he was Venusian?
I think he was in touch with ETs. He said as much.
I definitely agree with that. But for the FBI to put that as part of their files in the vault online, you can go dig it out. It's a document.
I would say that's. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, see what I mean? Like there's stuff in there they don't want you to see, but then there's stuff in there that they put in there, and you're like, God, do I even believe it?
Because I think we know Venus is not habitable. It's just not.
No, but at one time, I wonder if it was, much like Mars.
Yeah, well, I think Mars probably was habitable because we got first-hand information from contactees who've been told by the ETs directly that yes. And that comes up a lot, actually.
Well, a lot of people have those apocalyptic type dreams, which they believe may be memories because they see, the red sand. They see all of the stuff happening, and they just think it could be something that's from way back, maybe like an imprint or a memory, not so much dreams.
I interviewed one guy who was being taken by the ETs, and he doesn't really remember it, but he came back with the knowledge at 8 years old. He's like, "Mom, we came from Mars. Did you know that?" And she looked up. She's Catholic. She was not.
Oh, yeah. We don't talk about those things. That's a family secret.
He got in trouble in church very early on because it's like, that's not right. He'd stand up just like young Sheldon in church.
Right.
That's not right.
Oh boy.
What are you talking about?
He's my favorite.
Out of the mouths of babes, right?
Sheldon's my favorite. I even have a shirt that says Bazinga. My daughter got it made for me. He's my favorite child on that show. Michael Kennedy has a question. Preston, do you think a well-covered video-wise live streamed, this is painful for me, CE5 event would bring a sighting, or better yet, an undeniable proof of high strangeness given the large number of ongoing sites?
I'll leave it up for you.
Yeah. I think it certainly has that potential, or certainly would have had that potential when we were having a lot more activity. But now, in my book, High Strangeness, shameless plug.
There it is.
I interviewed a guy from Europe who has had a lot of encounters. And he says, you need to put this in the book, that people who are doing CE5s are a little bit vulnerable to becoming victims of MyLab encounters.
Oh, yes.
Really?
Yes. And that they, can come down and they will put on a staged event for you and you're not going to like it.
Wow.
So I think this is something we have to look out for. But yeah, I sure wish, that we had cell phones during some of these major waves, like Gulf Breeze or the Topanga Canyon wave, or, all these major waves, and that people were out there more organized with CE5s. And now I think we're at the point where, hey, I'm a little bit nervous about it. At some point, all this evidence is going to come out. People have gotten excellent footage.
Right.
And they post it on Facebook, and then instantly the CGI avalanches right over it and buries it.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no way now to determine what's real or not. But if there's
Really?
enough people in a group who are scientifically minded and are in various positions where you could triangulate the object, which is exactly what happened in Mexico City in 1991. Fortunately, it stayed up long enough that 30 people in different parts of the city were able to videotape it. That's the best footage. The Cumbergaz turkey footage. I love that footage.
Right.
Because Dr. Lear was there, and he's a trustworthy researcher.
Mm-hmm.
And there were people who saw this, and they haven't been able to debunk it. But now, I don't know if we're able to do that at this point with our governments in possession of reverse engineered technology that can mimic a UFO.
Here's one for you. How do we know that these people planning these events aren't in cahoots with MILA?
Yeah, well, that's also a problem. Look at any UFO organization, whether it's the first one, APRO, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, or QFOR, so NICAP, or MUFON. They have problems with government infiltration. I mean, it caused some of them to actually crumble.
But what about, sorry. Mm-hmm. And what about these independents that go up and create these CE5 events without naming names? How do we know they're credible? How do we know they're not creating an event so that the government could come in, that they're not working together? How do we not know, especially when they're charging exorbitant amounts of money to have this experience? Because I thought that if you're you're an experiencer, you're a contactee, or you're an abductee, you would want to share that experience without charging $6,000 a person.
Yeah. Well, I was part of a CE5 group, and no, we never charged a dime to anybody.
That's what I meant.
Knowledge should be free. And this is not something you need to pay $1,000 to do. Anybody can do it. And it's been done long before it became popular. This has been done.
Why not just telepathically put it out there? That's all I did. I just sat there and I looked up and I went, I was just outside. I was out by the water, by the river. And I just said, okay.
Well, I will.
Within less than a week, a few days, bam, there it is.
I'm not afraid of naming names in some cases. And Stephen Greer is kind of the leader in this field, and he's very controversial.
That was my controversy. Now I can speak up because you said it first. I can just agree.
I was with him when a UFO showed up more than once, and it was for real.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I saw it with my own eyes in a crowd of 20 or 30 people.
Right.
On the first night, the best one. And I talked to him extensively, and we had a few arguments.
Does he need to charge that much money to be part of his group, though? Like, I just...
Yeah, well, that's my main complaint.
Yeah.
And,
he's changed, hasn't he, since his first... I'm sorry, Stephen, if you're listening. I watched you from the beginning, and I'm a little bit disappointed.
Yeah,
Michelle's going to kill me.
That's my main complaint. I don't think... But, he's got his mission he wants to accomplish on Earth, and if that's what he wants to do and you want to pay, that's your freedom to do it. I did attend one of his seminars, which cost me $300. I wasn't going to join CSETI because he wanted 200 something to lecture, and the newspaper paid. I'm like, okay, I'll go. And I wrote an article for the newspaper.
Right.
I loved his first film. I loved it. I really did. I really enjoyed Unacknowledged. I thought it was incredibly well done, and it helped me get through a lot of stuff, and I appreciate him for that.
Book, Disclosure, that he put out is a must read. It's absolutely something people should look into.
Mm-hmm.
I am proud of what he's done in terms of the disclosure movement. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's done a lot of good, a lot more good than anything. Yeah. He's brought a lot of awareness, and a lot of people have been able to take a deep breath and say, okay, I'm not crazy.
But he stuck it through. You look at people like Corey Good, who retracted a lot, I think, out of fear for his life and his family, because that, he was posting things for quite a while about being threatened and then just completely backed off. So I imagine there's a lot of people out there right now who are coming forward, and you have those who are being threatened and people who are just afraid to come forward.
He has his career surrounded. He has a huge
Well, he does now, but he's
bodyguards too, though. He talks about that.
He's put forward some really interesting. You see him in interviews, and the guy's breaking down in tears because his life is being threatened.
I'm not dissing him for that at all.
Oh no, I you know what? It's a whole
respect for him.
It's a whole other show. I agree with Preston.
I think he's a contactee. Crazy. He's got a loyal fan base, but I don't agree with everything he says.
I can't agree with everything anyone says, and I especially. We talked about this not too long ago on the show, closer to after the break. The I'm former CIA thing doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sit well with me. Regardless of how trusting they may be, I would not sit and talk to anybody.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I'm looking up
would listen, but I wouldn't.
There's some major researchers, and I can't find who they are. I'm like, who are these people? Because, generally you can track someone's down. I've gotten pretty good at investigating with all the tools you have now. And there's some major researchers. I'm like, who the heck is this person?
Right.
I cannot find any trace of them on the internet.
Right.
That always raises my eyebrows.
I think that, you have a lot of people in the field. When you look at CE5s, and we spoke about this before, I mean, Russian scientists were doing this back in the 70s. They were just bringing down, because we didn't have to go, we didn't have to go to space, because they would just be at one of their Air Force bases and they would just call them forward and they would come in. And this is how they
There's a Peruvian contactee, Sisto Paz Wells, who's still in the field and has been doing it for years.
There you go. Yeah. I know. I love it. But it goes to show you that it's not this big movement. Like, you could do it by yourself, and chances are you'll get results a lot easier than if you're sitting there with 30 people.
Yeah. Well, I know it's getting late, so I do want to just give a quick little scoop on the book that I'm putting out.
Do it. Yes,
we run out of time, because
we're good.
That's going to be my next book, Not From Here, Volume 5. And I want to talk about it here for the first time ever.
Do it.
It's not ready yet, but I've got some exciting things I want to cover.
Okay.
And one of them is our cases involving giant fleets of UFOs.
Wow. Okay, that's a new one.
Yeah, it's super rare, because when someone sees a UFO, it's one or two or three.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually more often a couple than a singular UFO. There's usually another one up there. Which is super interesting. But I've got some cases that I've collected which involve 50 or 100 or 200 or 300. And there's not a lot of them. But here's one that I will talk about. And this occurred on February 20th, 1947 in New York. And it's super interesting because this is, of course, the launch of the modern age of UFOs, pre-Roswell. And this guy was at Syracuse University. And the astronomer at the university comes running out and he says, you two, come in here. I want you to look through my telescope. And they're like, what? He's like, just look through it and tell me what you see. And so he looked through this telescope. He says, come and look and tell me I'm not crazy. They looked through this telescope, and within about 20 or 30 seconds, a UFO appeared. And then another, and then another, and then another. And he started counting them. And they were going across in groups of 10 or 12 or 20. They counted over 200 of them coming down. It's like, yeah, I see them. I don't know what they are. And mind you, this is 1947. So
that's amazing.
Aircraft.
And that's the real deal. Like, this isn't any of ours.
No, so they came in force, a large amount. There's so many of these ETs out there. It's not just a couple of them. There are. Right. So I found a bunch of cases like this where people see 70 UFOs in the sky dancing around. Or another really famous case was in Farmington, New Mexico, where this was 1940. Gosh, what day was that? Let me see if I wrote that down here somewhere. 1950, March 17, 1950. Where half the town of Farmington saw this. We're talking a good 1,000 people at least. We saw hundreds of craft flying in the sky at once. So this is one of the chapters I'm digging deep into on what I would call giant, massive UFO fleets. And it's
Wow.
amazing to hear these because they don't get a lot of coverage.
They don't. Aside from Phoenix Lights, you're sort of not really getting a lot of stories about that. Why do they come out in wolf packs, like in giant, amounts like that?
I think in some cases this is an operation, as what we might call a military operation, where they're going out. Okay, we're going to contact a bunch of people on this night.
So for beings that are trying to stay incognito, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, or it could be an honest to God display. I think the Farmington case was a display. The one in Syracuse, clearly not, because you couldn't see them without a telescope.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But so I think we've got a couple of things going on here.
Right. So what's the biggest that you've come across so far? Like the biggest display of crafts all at one time?
It's about 200 or 300. I think that first one.
Come on. That's crazy.
Yeah, there was one at Catalina Island.
That's crazy.
I investigated two personally, so that's kind of what drew me in. And I'm like, oh gosh, how come I'm not hearing other cases like this?
Right.
I've never heard of anything that massive. This is the first for me.
Yeah, it's not been well covered. So that's one of the things I'm hoping to get the scoop on. So I've kept very tight-lipped about it because people will swoop in and
because wouldn't that just bring on an wouldn't the world's militaries look at that as a sign of aggression and react?
From a military mindset, I have sympathy for them.
Yeah.
When they came and shut down the nuclear missile, they must have crapped their pants.
Right.
They really must have had a fit over that. When really it's a clear message, like, what are you doing?
Right.
But from a military perspective, they've got to be losing their minds when they see these things hovering over our dams, our power stations, our airports, our electrical installations. I just found another case of that. They hovered right over the anything technological. They're there. Prisons as well.
So that's kind of a concern in a sense, because there's a belief, like Dolly always talks about, how they've left. So do you think this is something, when we fall into false flags, that would easily be recreated to instill fear? Because this is something that's obviously been going on for a really long time. So I think people could easily think that, yes, it is a sign of aggression, and this is what we're being taught to believe.
Yeah, and especially with not so much even reverse engineered technology, but 5D holographic, or 6 or 7 or however high it goes. I don't even know.
Drones and such too.
They can just put their little things in this, turn it on, and here comes this army of UFOs, and all they need is one to shoot down a laser and fry a building, and we have Independence Day for real.
Great.
It's aliens.
Yeah.
It's not. And I can tell you pretty much with confidence that if anyone is being fried intentionally by a craft, that is government.
Wow. Well, I'm anxious to hear more about that for sure. Because to be able to write a whole book on those type of experiences, it'll be fascinating to see how many you find and how many you come up with, and how do you collaborate it?
Yeah, well, the good thing about those is they often do have multiple witnesses.
Right. Yes. But when you talk about the 40s, that's a long time ago. I mean, it's hard to jog the memory. Mind you, if I saw 300 UFOs, I don't think I'd ever forget it.
Yeah. And that's what's so hard about UFO research, is this stuff is covered up. And I'm digging up all these old UFO magazines, and it's such a treasure when I find them. I'm like, oh, wow, look at this.
Yeah.
Things, archived, vintage magazine.
I've got loads of magazines. I should look through some and see if I can find any articles for you. Like older magazines.
I'm interested. And another subject I'm covering in the book was one I kind of touched on one of my YouTube episodes a while back, and was sort of inspired by an experience by Betty Hill, who almost was given an ET book. They said, do you want anything? She's like, I want that. And they said, you won't understand it. And she's like, well, that doesn't matter. It's proof for me. And they said, okay. And she's walking down the darn ramp. And they said, stop. We need that book. She's like, wait, you said I could have it. And they're like, this is my proof. And they said, well, that's the point. We can't give you proof. And they took it back. And she was furious, rightly so, I think.
Right.
And I'm like, well, wait a second. Didn't Betty Andreasen get a book, a blue shiny book from the ETs? They gave it to her for 2 weeks. She took it home. And they said, you can't keep this. You can't show it to anyone. We're taking it back. I'm like, wait, I know of other cases. And I started collecting them. Jeff Selver, a recently new contactee in terms of coming out and talking about his experiences, had that experience as well. On board a craft was shown this book. And found out with Reaver.
And she couldn't keep hers.
No. And they always described it as this blue shiny book with jewels on it. Dolly Safran. I'm like, I don't suppose you ever seen a book on board a craft. She's like, well, yeah, actually. I'm like, really? Please describe it to me. And it was the same description. These are not normal books, of course.
Right.
They are more like Harry Potter type books.
Right.
Where the pictures come alive and it's holographic and it speaks to you or plays. I mean, it's an amazing piece of technology.
Right. Right. Which would make sense in advanced culture, you know.
So cool, because I put that out on a YouTube episode and I got a dozen more cases.
Interesting.
So this is a thing. This is absolutely a thing. Somewhere out there, I think probably someone has their little book. I don't know. I'm wishful thinking there because Dolly tried to take hers home and she got in deep trouble. They're like, are you kidding me? You cannot take this home. If this got into the wrong hands, it would be very dangerous.
Which you could understand. Right. Yeah. I don't imagine you would be allowed to have too much, you know, from a craft. But if anybody's listening and you have anything of interest, you know, you'll have to contact Preston. Because there are cases. Again, there's one I can send you as a story of a man who saw a craft and they were doing a repair on it, and there were humanoid beings. Excuse me, and they left things on. I guess they were drinking something, and they just left the cup, and they left whatever was in the cup on a bunch of rocks that they were sitting on while this was happening. This guy basically took it. They took off without it and went on to own, excuse me, a large pharmaceutical company. And he was using this concoction to put in his medications that apparently were working. And I mean, it's something that he apparently went to his death with.
Wow. Yeah, there was a smattering of cases like that where people have gotten artifacts. Often they're crystals or pieces of metal or stones or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean,
food in a couple of cases, pieces of fruit or, you know, seeds or sticks and little things like that, which are certainly interesting. There was one case where kids were using their flashlights to Morse code at a UFO, and it landed.
Brilliant. CE5.
They walked on board, and the ETs asked them all these questions, wouldn't answer any questions. Kids offered their flashlight, which they took. The ETs gave them their flashlight. So they're running home with this alien flashlight.
That's awesome.
This is in Ecuador, according to Jimmy Gieux, the French researcher. And, of course, the men in black came. Helicopters, jeeps surrounded the poor kids. They were taken away from their homes, questioned. The flashlight was taken. But yeah, one guy got an ET telescope that was also taken.
Right.
Or men in black folks.
Right.
Such a shame. We could have this giant museum of ET artifacts.
Well, somebody does.
Yeah, we're going to start the blue room.
Not any of us. Right.
So infuriating. I so want to see that. And that
you know they have it. You know they have the technology.
This is why you cannot tell me there's disclosure. Show me that room filled with ET artifacts. Show me the Roswell craft. Show me the bodies.
They can't. They'd be giving up control.
Yep. Until I have that, disclosure has not happened. It's still a cover-up. That's what I want to see.
We're never going to see full disclosure.
They won't tell us.
We're given little tidbits of things, and that's all we'll ever be given. I mean, we can't even get generic truth.
We can't get them to tell us who killed JFK like 100 years later.
Yeah.
And Marilyn Monroe, like, I mean, even I know who killed her. Like,
or Dorothy Kilgallen, who started talking about crashed UFOs. A mainstream reporter.
Right.
The Black Dahlia, who killed her. These are all people that were talking. Marilyn Monroe was talking about UFOs and what they wanted to disclose, meaning JFK and Bobby and all that stuff. Like, come on. It's just too much. They won't. It's control. Everything is about control and money.
Yeah. Well, here's my message to all those folks listening now who are on the wrong side. Do the right thing. Tell the truth. It's not hard. It's not too late.
No.
You can do it.
You're saving your future family.
Karmic debt people are incurring by doing the wrong thing and hurting people will come back to you, because we are immortal beings. You may be thinking, well, I'm doing the right thing here on Earth now. Think about your existence in its totality. You're digging a hole if you're hurting people. And it's going to be hard to get out of. Do the right thing. This is something contactees know. Contactees, generally speaking, are super nice people.
Right.
They're very generous. They're amazing people.
Right. And what do you think, lastly, what do you think the message to humanity from ET is? Generically speaking, because I know there are many messages, but what's the gist of it?
Love is the message. Wake up is the message. Trust yourself. Work on yourself. Wake up. This is definitely one of their main goals, is to just get people to become telepathic again.
Right.
That's it. Work with telepathy, astral projection, and all these just basic skills, healing, stuff we can do. That, and stop polluting and killing each other. Boy, they're upset about the use of nuclear materials and bombs and corruption and greed and pollution and chopping the forests. That's their main message, really.
I think also the big one is remember who you are. 100%. We're a species with amnesia, and if we could tap in and remember where we came from, who we really are, what we're capable of, I think you would see an entirely different civilization on this planet.
Yeah, and we're seeing it. There's progress.
Yes, we're getting there. Yeah, but you notice as people evolve and awaken, how the powers that be just amp up and step up.
Yeah,
make it harder.
It's a losing battle. You know, I really think that's what I say. Spiritual evolution, progress. It moves forward regardless of what you're going to do. Sooner or later, people are going to evolve. You know, you can't keep people in ignorance forever.
Right.
It's just not. It's a losing battle.
Right. I agree with you. So, how can everybody get a hold of you, Preston?
Well, pretty easily. You can go to my website, just punch my name in. It'll take you there. You can contact me on Facebook, Messenger, of course, or Instagram, Twitter as well, though I have still a hard time dealing with Twitter because
I know. Yeah. I know.
My email is easy to find. It's prestonufo@gmail.com. I'm always here for people if they've got a question or just need someone to talk to about their experiences. I am super busy, so please be patient with me. Right. Because sometimes, it seriously can take me a couple of weeks.
Right.
For my emails.
And every Monday night?
That's right. Thank you, Michelle. The light with Dolly. We're having so much fun. We're like 35 episodes in, interviewing all kinds of wonderful guests.
Congratulations.
Having so much fun with it. Yeah, we just interviewed Michael Schratt.
Right.
About crashed UFOs. And boy, what a treat that was. He's
right.
That dude is smart.
So if you know of anyone that you'd like to see on the Light Gate with Dolly and Preston, or you possibly would like to be a guest yourself or recommend a guest, they can contact you. Just all the different avenues that Preston just gave you.
Yeah, Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern.
There we go. There we go. And with that, I'm going to sign us off. So thank you all for tuning in. You guys in chat room just make it so much more fun. We appreciate you all for being here and participating. Great question, great comments. We wish we could get to everyone, but we have 7 chat rooms that come down into one. So it's a matter of just trying to get through everyone. So thank you. Big thank you to Preston Dennett, as always. Such a pleasure when you join us. Also, big thank you to Folgers Coffee for sponsoring tonight's show. Thank you to Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon. Big thank you to Steve McGinnis. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tomorrow night, we welcome back returning guests Dan and Teresa Duke, who are the great-grandchildren of Jesse James, and they will be discussing Jesse James' connection to the Knights Templar and secret treasure and things of that nature, things you did not know about Jesse James. If you missed the last show, you're going to have to go in and dig it up because
I watched it. It was good.
Wasn't it great?
It was
Wow. It's like, what? Are you kidding me? That's really good. I know.
You just never know.
I know. And he has sent more photos too. So we're going to be able to check some things out. So it's going to be a fantastic show. So for everyone else who's tuned in tonight, thank you. And we shall see you tomorrow evening. Good night.